Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Jade, and this is How to App on iOS. And today, I have a very special guest by the name of Pete Johns from Studio Live. Today, we're going to be talking about how to distribution, sponsored, of course, by DistroKid. And we're going to start off the show with a song by our very special guest, Pete Johns. This is Choices. Oh, yeah, everybody, what's going on? It's Friday morning here in Australia. Thursday for the rest of you and living in the past. Catch up, will you, one day, please? We're sick of waiting for you here in Australia. What are you waiting for? Come on, hurry up. Anyway, this is today's show. We're not doing an interview today. We've got a very special guest. We've got a very special topic to talk about. And I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for joining us here in the chat. We need to get some business out of the way first before I bring on my guest and have a rant. It's not a rant today, it's a discussion. It's a Q&A. It's something. We don't know what it is exactly, but it's coming your way right now. And that message I need to give you is this. Today's episode is brought to you by DistroKid. DistroKid are a digital distribution service that help you get your music to a mass of streaming services, including Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, YouTube Music, who used to be Google. There's so many places you can get your music sent out to through a digital distribution service like DistroKid. And the wonderful thing about DistroKid is that it is an annual fee, one low price of $22.99 a year, and you get unlimited releases of all your music, unlimited songs, upload your lyrics, Spotify check mark, just to tell everybody I'm a real artist, because that's what we want people to know. You can create royalty splits, split money between your other artists that you may work with. You've got 21 free tools. We're going to talk about some of those tools today to help you get your music heard by people. You get a free mobile app to do all your business on your phone if that's what you prefer. There's also 2 other tiers available to you if you are a musician who creates multiple things, like the Musician Plus plan. You get 2 artists for $39.99 a year. Or if you're like me and you have artists up the wazoo, you can release 5 artists for $89.99 annually. But if you use that code C over in the corner and the one my dear friend Thomas Christ has put here in the chat, distrokid.com/VIP/Jade Starr, you'll get 7% off your first year. DistroKid have been just a phenomenal support of this channel, and I can't thank DistroKid enough. And you know what I'm going to say, I do it all the time. I love you, DistroKid. I have checked with DistroKid, and they said that's okay to do. So it's a relationship, me and DistroKid. All right, let's bounce back over here. We'll talk a little bit more about DistroKid as we go on. Today we're talking about distribution overall, and maybe you get a little bit of an understanding of history of distribution and record labels and all this kind of stuff and what it all means. And I couldn't think of anybody better to do this with than my dear good friend Pete Johns. Let's bring him on, shall we? You ready, folks? You ready? Grab onto your ankles. Here we go. Welcome to the show, Pete. I need
Grab
some applause.
onto your ankles. That's an interesting introduction. It is. It's a pleasure. It's going to go downhill. We're going to go off on tangents. But first and foremost, we are going to talk distribution. I, too, share a love of DistroKid and a love of music, and think that everyone should be able to get your music out there to the world. My mantra has been create, record, release for nearly 8 years now. So I'm all about the getting your music out there to other people's ear holes. So a pleasure to be here. A pleasure to chat to you about this very important topic today.
I love having you on the show, Pete. I get excited. Why do I get excited? Because we don't have to do much to prepare for a show, do we? Because we've known each other so long. It's like we read like today, just for example, folks, I sent Pete the little running guide of things that we're possibly going to talk about. And at the same minute, he sent me his one, because I'm going on your show after this, aren't I?
Absolutely, yes. I'll have the over on the podcast. So we're talking about lyrics, which is related to everything that we talk about here, because unless you're doing instrumentals or pieces of music, which is fine too, a lot of us are writing lyrics as well. So yeah, we'll be chatting over on my channel in the podcast this week about lyrics, and DistroKid also let you put your lyrics up. I'm sorry, we'll stop talking about DistroKid. We're talking about distribution, but yeah, my recommendation too. And full disclosure, I also am sponsored by DistroKid on one of my weekly shows. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt that it deserves, because I like to put the details out there on Front Street. But I also like to say that when I first started looking to release my music, I found DistroKid first and started using them. I'd been using them for 2 years and started making videos showing folks how to use DistroKid to distribute music. And then DistroKid, thankfully, DistroKid came to me and said, would you like to make these videos and be sponsored by us because you're doing it anyway? And I said, absolutely. So, yeah, it's been one of those wonderful relationships where it's not a company that came to me and said, use our product, and I started it. It's the opposite way around, where I was using the product and was more than happy to make videos about it. And it's growing. Like you mentioned in the opening there, the mobile app now, there's literally zero excuse now to not get your music out there. Mobile creators used to say, but I use iPad. It's like, well, there's an app now. So you got zero excuse to not get your music out there to the world.
And I was a user of DistroKid as well before they sponsored this show too. So I need to let you know, full disclosure, that, well, as you saw, they're sponsoring this show. But I discovered DistroKid through you. So it's like Avon, isn't it? Wait,
are we just a giant MLM? Is this just network marketing disguised as music creation? Oh dear, now I'm worried.
I'm scared too.
I mean, am I the top tier then? And you have the pyramid of underlings? No, it doesn't work like that. It does. Funny enough,
kind of does.
It kind of does. Well, there is, and again, to give full disclosure,
yes.
DistroKid have affiliate links. You've got one in your description. I've got one in the description of my videos, and they make a payment to us as creators if we refer you. You get 7% off, we get a small payment. So in that regard, it is, but it's affiliate marketing, not network marketing. The difference being is that I don't recruit Jade, and then Jade recruits you, and then you recruit someone else, and then suddenly you're doing no work, but you got this network of underlings in a triangle shape, shall we say, below you. There's no MLM MLM creepiness going on here. It's all above board.
What it's essentially saying is there's no chance of a rug pull happening. We're not going to like leave you in financial ruin.
No, in fact, we guarantee that by releasing your music with DistroKids, you probably won't make a lot of money. But hey, that's not. Look, you may, and that's the thing. It's kind of, if you are really, really popular and you're getting millions of streams, then you might. But I don't know. I know we'll talk about this as we go through. But people distribute and release music for different reasons. Some people do it wholeheartedly for the art of it, and they just want to get their stuff out there so that people can listen to it. And other people want to try and become famous or successful or make money. And either side you're on, it really doesn't matter. You do you, boo. That's my 2024 slogan. So yeah, you get to choose, but that's the beautiful part is you have choice, and you get to decide what you do because you're your own person. You're a grown up.
Absolutely, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Well, we're not going into choices of specific distributors. That's one thing we won't be doing today, because that's up to you to go and look into. But how I want to start today's show is, well, let's go back. Let's go back in time. I wish we had like a warbly thing where we could. We're going back in time because the old days. It's important to like discuss distribution in the old days, and there's a lot of misconceptions about the way music people used to get signed. That was the thing. You got signed to a record deal back in the 50s and 60s, and Elvis and all these people signed to these huge record deals. So, what is your understanding, Pete, of the old days and how it all used to work?
Well, it's like most things. It looks all shiny on the surface, but you scratch away the enamel, and then there's a seedy underbelly of everything. So, yeah, people, and it actually makes me not chuckle because I don't laugh at people, but I'm a little saddened by people that think that a record deal is like this end game, is this thing that you want to achieve, especially these days. But even in the old days, records companies are gambling. They're like TV. They're like anything that you can think of where you are putting a bunch of things out there. You're basically, it's like venture capitalists now. Like, it's why we've got all these weird apps and weird like websites and weird endeavors that happen, is that you basically got to roll the dice 100 times to try and hit once. And the record companies are the same thing. So the vast majority of record deals, even back in the day, were not successful for the artist. They were successful for the record label. That being said, it was different back then because there was a lot of more inherent cost in actually distributing music. So a record company wasn't just going to roll the dice 1,000 times. They could probably only roll the dice 10 times. So they had to make sure that you were an Elvis or a Beatles or a Beach Boys quality before they actually invested a lot of money, because it cost a crap load to actually release music, because you had to actually press, back in the days, the vinyls or the cassettes or the CDs. You had to pay for marketing. There wasn't any free social media, organic marketing. Everything was paid for. You had to, put I was going to say drugs, but I'll say you had to put the money under the table for the radio station so that they would play your record so that people would hear it and go out and buy it. So yeah, record labels and music distribution back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right up to 2000s was a very different game. And the independent, and you can talk to this because you and I have both done this, it was getting 50 cassettes printed for like $500, sticking them in your boot and hoping you could sell them for $10 each at your gigs. Like, that was independent distribution back in the day.
Absolutely. And you're right. Back in those days, it was very corrupt. The mafia were involved. This was because the music industry exploded. Like the Beatles and Elvis and all these artists, they exploded, and people, you've all seen it, everybody. You've seen the video clips of the girls screaming and the mass hysteria over music. So record labels step in, and of course, when something takes off, there's always going to be a seedy underbelly of people who want to control things and control the narrative. And there's many, many stories you can read about this, the underhanded tactics they went to, including the invention of the jukebox. A big part of the music industry back then, the jukeboxes were put inside of pubs or clubs and stuff to gauge and to push music that they wanted people to listen to. And cartels are involved in getting these machines in. It was a very big business. And there's lots of conspiracy theories out there that there was a death clause for some artists and stuff like that. If they didn't perform, they're going to get bopped off and all this stuff.
Yep.
Really big business,
There's got to be a video there that's relating that to what's happening now with like venture capitalists and all the crypto bros and the AI bros. It's the exact same thing. As soon as you see something where money's there, people just come out of the woodwork. And that's the thing. There's people that have no sort of interest in music. There's a lot of people that are in the record industry, just like there are now crypto bros and AI bros. They don't actually care about the technology or the underlying product. They just see money, they see dollar signs, and they come running. And whenever that happens, there's also things like organized crime and other things as well. And again, we could speculate for hours on that, but there's heaps of videos. Just search history of the recording industry on YouTube, and you'll come across every wacky theory that you could possibly ever want to read.
Look up on YouTube the music death clause. It's a fascinating rabbit hole to go down, and far less brain melting than the flat Earth. So let me tell you that you won't come away like brain broken after it.
There's actually some little bits of evidence for for some of the recording stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is a record label compared to a distributor and a publisher? Because I see a lot of people get confused about it. I didn't know what it was for the longest time. And when we get into this, I have some really inside information that's going to blow your mind, because I was in it at the ground level for a time. So let's talk. A record deal may offer more resources and broader exposure opportunities, which means giving up some control of your music. That's the thing. With a record deal, normally, and I've had a couple of record deals here in Australia with small independent labels, they basically take your music. They pretty much own that recording. They don't own the music. They own that recording of the music, because the majority of a record label back in the day was they fronted the money to produce the album, to put it out. So they needed to recoup their costs. And a lot of bands used to get sucked in and sign these things without getting somebody to look at it. And then all of a sudden that copy of your song is gone forever. And if you don't pay it back, you're done.
Yep, and just look at Taylor Swift, if you want a very, very, very modern example. The reason that she re-recorded Taylor's version of her entire back catalogue of albums is because she signed a dodgy deal and she didn't own her own masters. So she could never actually re-release and reuse any of those songs. Even though they were her songs, she wrote them, she owned the copyright to them. It doesn't matter if you signed a record deal and dodgy record company A, who we won't mention, owns your masters, there's nothing you can do. So what did she do? She got some talented musicians and producers, went to the studio and recreated the entire album, re-recorded it, and now she's got the Taylor's version. And because all the Swifties are her fans, they're going to go and listen to the Taylor's version, not the original version. So yeah, it is a very real thing that continues to happen even in the most modern of pop music.
And then you have publishers. What's your knowledge, Pete, on publishing?
So this is where I start glazing over and sort of go on the floor in the fetal position, because mechanical licensing and royalties and publishing, to me, in my head, it's very old school, even though we still do publish digitally, publish our music these days. So it's probably the biggest gap between my understanding, because for me, I create music, I record it, and then I release it, and I release it using a distributor. I've not focused or ever delved into the world of publishing, and I've never actually worked with a publisher or published my music formally. So take it away, Jade.
If you break it down simply, a record label, as we said, will provide money, will provide capital to produce the songs that you have for an album, to release that. They need to get their money back, and that's what they're looking for. And they most of the time will try to take ownership of that particular recording, not of the songs. Where a publisher invests money into the songwriter or composers and can control the musical compositions, whereas they don't control the actual recording. So they invest in you to create things. So I didn't know about this. So just to give you some backstory, how I got into understanding publishing, and I'm not going to go into specific names. I can't, right? And it is what it is. Take it for what it will. Back in the day, I always believed, like many people, that their record labels used to sit there and they just have this office where they'd sit there waiting for cassettes to come in from bands. And there was somebody there at the cassette office going, we've got a new demo, pop that in. No, in the bin, no. It's never worked like that. It never has. I'm sorry to break the veil of mysticism. But within record labels and such, there's always big wigs the people who control, who run the company. And how it works is they themselves have a network of friends, of people in their lives that they trust, who go out to gigs and listen to music. And within that network, this is how companies like big record labels would find artists through the friends and networks that they have, who are actually going out to the gigs and say, hey, I went to this gig, I saw this hot band, they're smoking, they got like 500 people there. And that's how artists are discovered. It is a network of close friends. And I was lucky enough, and the way I ended up befriending one of Australia's biggest people in the music industry, and we became friends. And every time we would hang out, they would come over to my house and always have a CD in their back pocket, some blank burnt CD, and go, chuck this in. And I go, oh, what's that? Oh, some band someone told me about. Check it. Nobody's heard of them. They're from, WA. No one's ever going to sign these people, but they're amazing, and I'm going to sign them. That's the way it works. And like I know from example, being out one night with a group of our friends with this person, and somebody mentioned a band they'd seen in St Kilda. 3 months later, they were signed.
Yep.
Because that's the way it works, man.
It is. It's not what you know, it's who you know in pretty much everything. And you've probably heard of A&R, like artist and repertoire, and that's what a lot of these big guys are. Who's it? Johnny Ive over in the US. He was the big guy that everyone knew and everyone wanted to go to, and he was the star maker. So there's people that are in control of a lot of these things, and it's not always the most above board and the most fair way of doing things, but it's the same in most parts of business, unfortunately. And the music business is a business, and it's kind of why at the very start there I separated it out and said, if you don't want to even worry about the record labels and the publishers and the A&R and any of that stuff, you can do it all yourself now. And that just simply wasn't the case even 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So it is nice that you have the choice. We played choices up the front. It's nice you have the choice of being able to be completely independent, give away some of your control, because you can do little bits and pieces. Now that Jade's explained that, the difference between the different places and the different businesses, or you can just sell your soul to the devil and roll the dice and hope for the best.
And you got to remember too, the difference with a publishing deal is that not all artists write their own songs, and this is where publishing deals come in, because there are artists out there who write music, and you never know who they are, and that's where their music is published, and for the artist. So it is possible too to have a publishing deal and a record deal at the same time. Like Ed Sheeran is one of these people who has that, because he co-writes songs with people through publishing. And therefore, he has a music publishing agreement as well as a record deal. So they're not individual things. Yeah,
absolutely. It was rumored that Prince made as much, if not more, money from the songs he wrote for other people through the publishing than his actual own songs that he performed himself. So yeah, and he even performed other people's songs. So it's always there's this crossover between songwriting and actual. And a lot of us are kind of singer-songwriters or self-creators, and we don't even really think about it. But yeah, a lot of the people you hear, a lot of the stars, the artists that you hear. Like Taylor Swift's kind of the exception that writes a lot of her own music, but name pop star here over the last 30 years, there's a more than 50% chance they probably didn't write the vast majority of the songs they sung.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first time I came across publishing was when I met this person who's no longer with us anymore, unfortunately. And it's a shit story, man, really. Like, I met this person, we became friends. And, when you meet somebody who's like, it's got so much power in the music industry, I'm sure there's a lot of wankers out there who straight away would have gone, here's my CD. And I never did that. Because we were friends through something else, And but when I got sick, he actually offered me a publishing deal. And I was like, I have no idea what that is. What is that? And it turned out I was going to invest in you. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of money, and then I want you to, if you then want to go through and release this through us through a record deal, then we can do that as well. Unfortunately, that all slipped through because, unfortunately, they passed away. That was my big break, Pete. I was sitting there going, is this how it happens? In my apartment as you don't, the way people get deals too, if you look through the history of artists, not many of them sent their demo tape into somebody and got a phone call going, we got your demo.
Yeah. Yeah,
work.
it's kind of it's related to what I say when I do your music live, which is that the people that think that they've got a fire beat often have a little bit of a too high opinion of themselves and
Yeah.
probably don't quite have the same level of talent or skill as someone who's probably a little more humble and is just playing that open mic night or is just playing a gig with that band, and then suddenly, yeah, someone that's a friend of an A&R rep just goes, "Oh, did you see this Jebediah band that were playing at this club in Fremantle on the weekend?" They're like, "Oh yeah, they're pretty good." And then yeah, a year later they're releasing their first album. So yeah, I think you're right that it's there's no science. And this is the thing that people just want. Like, I'm just going to hustle and grind, like the grind culture of just like, if I just if I email 100 different playlisters, or if I pay some dodgy company, which I guess is the warning, the caveat here is the seedy underbelly of record deals and publishing, and all the rest of it is a lot of people will tell you that they are these things. They'll tell you that they're record companies. They'll tell you that they're A&R reps. They probably don't. If you get an unsolicited email from someone you've never heard of, it's 99% likely that it is dodgy, which does make it hard to find the ones that are real. But, quick LinkedIn search can usually help you out with that. So if you get someone, "Hi, my name is John Smith and I'm the head of Sony Publications." And then you go, "Okay, let's see. No, you're not actually," because the head of Sony Publications is this person, because I say it on LinkedIn. But yeah, it is sad because it's, again, like most things, it's preying on vulnerable people who are artists who just want to share their music with the world, or maybe want to become a famous pop star, or release their music and make the squillions of dollars. But either way, yeah, it is a hard road. And I don't know, what's your opinion on this, Jade? Is it harder now than it was then? Like, given all the things, if you had to say, is it harder to distribute music now than it was in the old days and be successful? Is it harder now or easier, or it depends on your definition?
I think it's harder now. I think it's
Yeah.
harder to cut through now. I think back then, like I've had record deals, I've had a publishing deal, I've toured without any of the stuff online way before the internet was a thing.
Yeah.
And it did come down to grinding and playing gigs. And one year we played 200 gigs in a year. And, flyers, demo tapes, constantly creating and pushing ourselves, getting, cutting out all the stuff, just the smallest advert we got in the local paper, doing all that stuff. And I think a lot of people don't have that these days. So it's a bit of a disadvantage, and you've got to rely on, I think that there's more opportunity now for sharks than there were before. Like the thing, even though we have the internet, and it's pretty easy if somebody's a shark and go, "Oh, right, don't deal with this person, they're a shark in the industry." That's all good and fine. But for everyone comes around and works out this one, there's another million that are just bombing your email account every single day. Where when it was there was no internet, that word of mouth, because there were less promoters and less people that could. So once they got out, like with venues that you were playing, or the promoters, or with management, once that word got out, they were fucked. They were fucked. And normally they do a midnight runner, and like a venue, you'd go to play a gig that night, and it's like, oh, everything's locked up. Where did they go? And
They
exactly,
Lyle Landley their way out on the monorail.
yeah, like there was a venue here in Australia called the Sarah Sands Hotel. I don't care. I'm going to talk about it. We did a gig there one night, and we got lumped with a bunch of cover bands. We had to open for them. We were a highly original band like Mr. Bungle. And all the way through the gig, I took the piss out, like I do, because I've got a big mouth. Took the piss out of all the cover bands, going, "Oh, at least we're not playing Metallica songs." And the owner didn't like it very much. And at the end of the gig, when we went to go and get paid and everyone was gone, the owner sent over his bouncers, and they punched me in the face and made sure I wasn't welcome there anymore. And I went public with it and told the press. And then all these people came out and spoke about the same treatment they'd had. And then it turns out that guy owed heaps of money and had ripped people off. And then the next week, the doors were locked and he'd done a midnight runner.
So you're saying that people that own pubs and clubs and bars are somehow unscrupulous and will do anything to make a buck and will shaft people? I'm shocked I am. Next, you're going to tell me they're involved in the drug trade and organised crime.
Well, there you go. The Richmond Club used to try and pay us with LSD. They go, "We got no money for you. Here's some LSD." And we go, that's not the agreement. You're only going to pay us $50.
Yeah.
It was a
Oh,
different time.
it was. And as Mark's saying here in the chat, all the local papers have shut down. Like, this is the thing. There was street press. Like, back in the day here in Adelaide, there was DB magazine, Rip It Up magazine. There was these free street press magazines where people would write for. They weren't paid. Like, they were volunteers, but they just wanted to write about music they were passionate about. If someone contacted you, it was because you put your phone number, your landline number on a demo tape that you'd sent around, and no one's going to go to the effort of that. When someone can send 1 million emails at the click of a mouse, they're going to just try that and just fish everyone. No one's going to sit down back in the day and find demo tapes and then call that number just to try and scam or hoax that one person out of $50. It wasn't worth their time and effort. So what's happened with the ease of getting your music out to the world these days, it's also increased the ease of trying to scam you. And it's the same with everything. And unfortunately, that's why we get all these phone call scams. That's why there's phishing scams and email scams and online pop-up scams. You kind of just got to assume that everyone's lying and until you can prove that they're not. It's the opposite of the old days where it's like, oh, I'll take you on your word and my word is my value. It's like, no, assume they're lying. Yeah, my handshake's as good as the signed contract it is.
Yeah.
No.
Let's say hello to everybody here. I haven't done that yet, so normally wait about half an hour for these shows. Hey, Thomas Christ and Rena, good to see you here over on the channel. Mark Bro, good to see you. Pookie Yan, we got Crimson Crux, g'day. Seagull Rock Squawk, SM Borthwick, Tremor Bear. I saw Mr. Smith up there. Got to give him the there you go, Mr. Smith. Who else? I saw Leela, Gary Hubs. What's going on, Hubs? Let me scroll and see if I've missed you. Please type something so I can catch you. Legs 11, because my chat only goes so far and then it stops, unfortunately. So type Joe and Barry Glenn are here as well. I saw at the start. Let me know you're here in the chat so I can say hello to you, and that'll make life easier for me. And hit the like if you want as well. If you don't, hit the dislike. It's all interaction, really, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like artists. If people hate an artist, like there's so many people that are just like, I keep talking about Taylor Swift, mostly because my children are a bit obsessed. But
so
yeah, people say I am. I actually, have you listened to some of her songwriting? It's pretty good.
She's good.
It's not bad at all. But yeah, it's like that. There's so many people that hate and that like preach hate about artists like Taylor Swift or like any other pop artist. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this artist is so lame. You're doing them a favor, like, because if you say this person's terrible, someone like me is going to go and listen to them and go, actually, I kind of dig that. So yeah, like, there's no such thing as bad publicity. Is still kind of the most true thing when it comes to everything, because yeah, look at how many YouTubers there are out there that are these outrage YouTubers that are just trying to put out clickbait that are going to make angry up the blood and create discourse and make statements that they know people are going to disagree with, so people will come and flame their chat and flame their channel. Don't do it, people. Don't. It's going to make you angry, and it's going to give them recognition that they don't deserve. So yeah, stay away. Sorry, that went on a really weird rant into anti, yeah, like negativity and drama and all this shit. You got plenty of that in real life. You don't need it in your pretend life as well.
This is a typical show for us. So Barry says, once upon a time, artists toured to promote their album. There was money in the recording. Now the record is used to promote the tour. Well, that's the way I see it. Well, I'd go one step further and say now the recording is used to promote the merchandise, because nobody makes money off the tours anymore because they're elaborate and there's so much insurance and all this stuff. Like, this is the things people don't think about. The insurance alone for a tour is just ginormous, especially traveling overseas with a big act and, you know, road crew and all that kind of stuff. Insurance up the wazoo, and then you've got insurance on the venue. It's ridiculous. So merchandise, and when you go and buy merch now, God, I bought a T-shirt at Mr. Bungle just recently, $80. I'm like, the ticket was it was not much more than the T-shirt. What?
Yeah. It's like walking through the airport when you go to a concert these days, looking at the prices. It's like, I'm pretty sure this is about a 300% markup of what you'd regularly pay for these sort of things. I go to my local record shop and T-shirts are $30 still. And yeah, you go to a gig and if it's not 60, it's $70 or $80 for a T-shirt. And forget buying vinyl or a hoodie or something like that. You're going to be no change from a couple of hundo. So Yeah, but again, it's the way it is, and unfortunately, look, okay, Johnson's going to get on his hippie lefty soapbox rant for a moment here, but here's the problem with capitalism. Just in case you were wondering,
here's your full camera shot, Pete. Take the box, my friend.
take the box. So here's the problem with capitalism, and the reason I keep comparing the music industry to venture capitalist is that they're all evil. No, they're all out for money, and the problem is that with hedge funds controlling a lot of the businesses in the world at the moment, it means that they're just looking for that next little bit of money. So they don't want to actually produce a product that's going to do a good thing for the world or that's going to progress something. They want to take something that is worth $1 million and make it worth $1.1 million so that they can split that out and give their shareholders a dividend, and that the stock price will go up. Line go up is the only thing that these folks seem to care about. And what it's meant for the music industry and for creators is that a small pool of people are now being paid astronomical amounts of money, which has diluted the amount. Like, forget your Spotify not wanting to pay the bottom 10% of artists because they're not earning enough. It's actually the opposite way around. Like, they're not able to earn enough because the top level artists, the top 20 artists in the world, are just dominating, and right down to the top five. Like, the reason I mentioned Taylor Swift is she is like twice as popular as the next one down. So it's the 80-20 rule, but these days it's almost become the 99-1 rule, that 99% of the resources and 99% of the revenue go into 1% of the artist group, which means it does make it. I don't mean to depress folks, but it is the reality of living in a capitalist society. I get that, unless we want to all become socialists or communists, which I personally wouldn't have a problem with. But that's the story for another day. But the reality of this is you kind of have to accept it and take control of your own. And it's why I say make sure that you know why you're doing things. Because if your number one reason for distributing your music is to become a millionaire, you're probably better off going and playing a scratch-off lotto ticket, because you've probably got a better chance over there. Have I depressed everyone?
Yeah.
Are you all just going to give up now?
Everyone's crying. Well, most people know this. I used to work in finance. I worked for American Express for a really long time, and where I worked was the top 5% of spenders in Australia. So I dealt with people with Centurion cards, the titanium cards, the rich bastards. And whenever there was a natural disaster in the world, right, any excuse, the insurance went up, man. Insurance went up. And so then what did American Express do? Out goes a letter to everybody. Due to unforeseen circumstances in the global world with all these disasters happening, your card's going up because insurance has gone up. So, it's always the bastards are always going to try and pinch as much as they can from you to make their pocket more full. It's just the way it is. So let's get back on track for a second. This is strange for me to be doing that, Pete. What's going on? Record labels, publishers we've talked about, but distribution. So distribution has been around a long time. Even though you've got a record deal, sometimes a record label will go through a different distribution company, and or you could have back then in the day signed up with got a distribution deal, which typically retains more control over your music and the direction of your career. So you had more power, but you didn't have the resources to get it out there. That was the problem, So there's always one hand that feeds into the other hand. So if you got this thing, then you're going to have to do this thing to get it out there, because there's no point having a distribution deal if nobody knows how to find you. And then that's where the labels come in, because they've got deep pockets and they can spend the money and create the little cardboard things in the record shops. What are they? You'd have all the
record shops where you go buy the special edition vinyl and T-shirts these days, right?
Yeah. Everyone just buys coloured vinyl now.
Yeah.
So let's move on to early digital distribution, because I got some memory lane to go down here. And
I love this nostalgia.
Thank you, Wayback Machine, because when the internet came, came piracy. Well, that's what they call it, piracy. People started sharing WAV files because music started to move into the computer age, and we were, able to share files. As soon as we were able to share things, music became that thing. And the earliest distributor I used back then was this place, mp3.com. Now, there were two versions of this. There was mp3.com US, so this was the US one, and you could actually sell your music through mp3.com. And so it was a very early time for digital distribution. There was also mp3.com.au. So we had our own Australian version. They were late to the game with selling music, but mp3.com were selling music. And the other one, who was actually a distributor, believe it or not, MySpace was selling music. And they were a massive player in the space of music. This is my original MySpace page.
It's not vomiting flashing gifts enough.
No, because I designed my own page back then. So, see, you could buy albums from here through PayPal and had my little and links to everybody and all my friends. So this was back, I think this is the Wayback Machine. This was early on because I ended up with, I think, 96,000 friends on MySpace. And when it went down, let me tell you, Pete, I was devastated because I was doing really well. MySpace was everything to me,
That's just again, not sorry to take us off track. I've just said to the chat I'll get off my soapbox, but to divert it slightly there, it's probably a really good thing. Like you've mentioned twice now where there were two things that you were like, this is going to be the big thing. Hello, balloons. This is going to be the big thing. And then it went away. And I think that's the other thing that people have this, like we want this permanency in things and we want the old days where you buy a record and then you own the record and you have the record forever. And I think distribution, as soon as it went digital, it also went temporary. And a lot of people just think, same with distributing through DistroKid, people are like, oh, why would you pay a yearly subscription? I know we're not talking down that today, but it's because who knows, in 5 years' time, will Spotify still be the behemoth that it is now? Will there be a new way that people are consuming and distributing music? Probably. Will it all be an AI chip in our head that we just think about a song and it suddenly comes into our head? I don't know, and neither does anyone. So I think it's a good, like looking back at mp3.com and MySpace, and when you mentioned this in the pre-show, I was like, yeah, it's actually a really good message to say that everything changes. Nothing is permanent. And if you try and, hey, here's my 5-year and 10-year and lifetime plan for my music, it's not going to work. You need to be able to be flexible and agile and change as things change as we go through. Because, we had NFTs and they failed. We've now got AI and that'll probably do something, but eventually it'll change and then it'll be something else. Like, it's all going to be different. Anyway, I'll get back on track now.
No, absolutely. It's hard. This goes back to that question before. Is it harder now than before? Because at least before, you knew where you stood. It was a hard contract. You had to go out and gig and make your money to pay things. You had to hustle, man.
Yeah.
Where now, like a new thing comes along, and it's every space online, not only digital distribution, but there's always something new that's like, hey, we do something a little bit different, and it's only a slight variation. Everybody gets on board, and then the thing shuts down. And there are a lot of virtual rug pulls out there in all spaces. The rug pull is the thing of how we live now.
I heard of something yesterday, and I think it's called Air Chat. Someone can correct me or if they know about it in the chat. And it's like Twitter for leaving like voice messages. And I'm like, this sounds like the most reprehensible thing. And it's Jason Calacanis, who you can have your own opinion on, but it's a VC guy, the sort of guy that I don't agree with fundamentally. And it's him and a bunch of his buddies, and it's this massive bro chat. You go on there and it's just like, I think that the future of AI is great. And then someone else is like, I also concur with that. Isn't money amazing? Yes, let's all roll around in giant pools of money. Success. I got the spit take. My job here is done.
Is it money amazing? Money, 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 money.
That's what they're thinking, really. It is. Need to cut to the chase.
It is. And, this is the part of the music industry, that the dark faces in the shadows that we never see, who are money, money, money. How can we suck the life out of these struggling artists?
Yeah.
And speaking of that, Napster came along on the internet.
Hey, Napster.
And hi to Lars Ulrich if you're watching. I love Lars. But Napster came along and people were sharing music. And this was, God, I still have so many albums that I got from Napster. And I still remember the viruses that I used to get as well. It was a very hit and miss.
Oh,
thing.
mate, Napster was okay. And then you went to like LimeWire and Kazaa and things. And they were the ones that you'd try and download something and realize afterwards it was an executable. And you suddenly had spyware on your computer.
Yeah. And thank God those days are gone, really, because there was the wild west of the internet and music and the way everything worked, and then things changed because along came Apple. They jumped into the game. We won't dwell on Napster because I think most people know the story. I'll touch on it lightly. They file sharing service, peer-to-peer. People were sharing music and artists were getting upset. Metallica came along and said, no, this ain't the deal. And this just fed way into the hands of Apple because Steve Jobs was sitting there waiting in the wings with this amazing product that was coming out called the iPod and the iTunes store. And this began the real onset of digital distribution and selling music for the low price of 99 cents or something. I think it was at 79 cents at one stage.
69 cents
69.
was like the
Filth.
Yeah. And the only thing I want to say, like between the Napster and the iTunes thing that I think was disappointing, but has kind of come full circle back around is that, and again, Napster, Johnson's going to keep continuing to get on a soapbox, but people like Lars Ulrich and Metallica and the bands that did sue Napster and eventually got them shut down, they were the ones that were maybe losing 10% of their millions of dollars of revenue of selling music through Napster. No Metallica heads were not buying Metallica albums because they could just download them as a crappy MP3 file. But what I loved about Napster was the music discovery. There are bands that I just simply never would have heard of if I hadn't been able to try before you buy. Because remember, this was a time where radio was really the only other way. Like we didn't have really internet radio stations. They were kind of just starting. There was no Pandora. There was no Spotify. There was no YouTube music. So the only way to kind of discover music was to either go to local venues and check out local bands, read street press, or go to Napster and go, oh, I've never heard of this band called Jebediah. I'll use them again because it was around that era.
True.
And I download a few of their tracks. And I'm like, this is really cool. I'm going to go to my local Virgin record store and or Brash's here in Australia and pick up the CD because now I know that they're cool. So, and I think we'll get to it. Brushes. I think we'll get to it later, but this is where Bandcamp is now. This is where YouTube is now. This is where Facebook is now. This is where Instagram is now. This is the try before you buy, where you get these little tastes of music that you maybe didn't know about, and the music discovery engines that we have these days. If you want to forget about the ranting of negative Johns before, the positive John says this is actually amazing because anyone can put themselves out on all of these free platforms, because don't forget, distribution used to cost a fortune for anything, and now anyone with a song could stick it on Bandcamp, could stick it on SoundCloud, slaps.com, YouTube for free and get free organic promotion. So
absolutely,
that's pretty amazing.
You don't actually need to pay for a distribution service. There's so many places out there that have that option. Let's say hello to a few people who have joined us since then. Conan Drum Band. I saw Lady Campion as well in here. There she is, Lady Campion. Hello to you. If I have missed you, I do apologise because we're in the midst of a rant. I guess we'll call it that. There's someone else here. Ed Zielinski, g'day, and Tom and Co. Also, Hugh Caldwell.
I think Tom and Co.'s comment there kind of covers everything that I was talking about there. And I think he's right that the current system is better for the likes of amateurs getting music out there to their mates and a few randoms, but worse for people trying to make it in music and getting cents as opposed to dollars for their art. So yeah, I think you're right. It's harder to make your fortune or become a famous rich musician, but it's much easier to share your awesome music with the world.
Now, when Apple released their iPod, I was like, oh, man, that's awesome. I want an iPod. How much? I don't want an iPod anymore because we were much younger than what we are now, and money wasn't really a thing when you're that young. You don't. But you're right about Napster. We're just touching on that again because I was an avid music collector. Like I bought so many albums, even of bands that were terrible, but I liked the album cover because heavy metal back in the day, the album covers are amazing, and that's what the beautiful thing was. We all of us who get nostalgic about albums, vinyl, we all go back to the covers and the open gatefolds and stuff. But due to albums, I made so many poor purchases because the artwork was, look at this, look at the artwork. Get at home and say, this is dog shit. What is going on? Why did I buy this crap? But when Napster did come along and LimeWire, you did have the opportunity to hear it beforehand, and I did use it that way. I still bought the albums. I guess I felt like I didn't want to. If you like it enough, you want to own it. Like that's the thing. But when Apple came along and said, "Hey, we're changing the whole music industry," for a long time I wasn't a part of it because I didn't have an iPod, and I was still using the Napsters and the break off small ones, because I had a shitty little MP3 player that was terrible.
So nostalgia here, but my first MP3 player was a Jazz Piper, which cost me at the time like $299, had 64 megabytes of built-in memory, and I also had a 16 megabyte smart media card. That's all words that kids today just would not understand. But and so I could fit around about 10 songs at decent quality. Yeah, there's a little Jazz Piper. That's my first ever MP3 player. It had a headphone jack though, so already better than an iPhone Pro Max 15. Just saying. So that was the first one. I then the Creative Nomad jukebox because again the same sort of thing. I didn't want to buy an iPod, so I went with the Creative Nomad juke. Oh, that was there. That's
I had
the
this
Nuvo.
one. This was my one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but then you got the jukebox, which had like a spinning hard drive inside it that would crash usually after about 3 months of use. And then I graduated to a CD player that played MP3 CDs. So I could burn 700 megabytes of MP3s onto one CD, and it had 20 seconds of skip-proof playback so that you could jiggle it around. And oh man, so yeah, those were the days, and I'm sure anyone over the age of about 35 or 40 will remember the early like MP3 players were their entire category. Like we didn't all just use our phones; it was MP3 players, and then it wasn't until Apple actually integrated the MP3 player with the store, the Apple Music store, to be able to sell music, that the actual distribution mattered. Before that, we'd all just download it to our hard drives, plug in your parallel cable to your back of your PC, and then copy over your dodgy Napster files. But yeah, Apple did the first integrated digital distribution.
Thomas on it there with nuggets. The nuggets from Cashies.
Love the nuggets.
Love the nuggets.
Oh. If you haven't checked out Dank Pods, a bloke called Wade here in Adelaide, who has an amazing YouTube channel, millions of subscribers, goes to Cashies, buys old iPods. He did like a 2 terabyte iPod where he tried to like upgrade the hard drives in old iPods. There he is, Dank Pods. Go and check it out. Really fun. And if you watch none of the other videos, watch the Cashies trip, because you'll see the cash converters, the secondhand stores that I go to here in Adelaide, and it's really fun for me watching those, because I'm like, oh man, I walk past those cabinets full of nuggets, and and he buys them and refurbs them, and just a really interesting dude, and well worth looking at, and a bloody awesome drummer and musician in his own right as well.
Yeah, he's on Twitch as well, does drum streams and stuff. Super talented, and it's a great walk through the history of music and how you listen to it, headphones, and he blows up headphones all the time. I love it. Destroys headphones. It's so much fun. But Manny says, makes a great point here. Music has always been pirated. I remember taping songs from the radio. Yeah, look, I think all of us around the age that we're all kind of around, we all listened to radio, would have our cassette players in there and record songs. I used to sit up Sunday nights here in Australia, listen to Casey Kasem's Top 100. I remember one year, I Just Called to Say I Love You was number one for half a fucking year. How? It wasn't that good. But that's what you'd do. You'd tape the songs and you'd make up your own tapes that way. So it's always been that way.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, recording off the radio. And I remember my cousin got one of the very first dual tape decks, and with high-speed dubbing. And that was the bomb diggity. So I'd go up to, he lived in Whyalla, and I'd go up to Whyalla and I'd bring a box of blank tapes, and he'd have a box of blank tapes, and I'd bring my tapes, and we'd sit there for hours listening to the music at double speed so that you could high-speed dub it onto another cassette. And then we'd take it home, and I'd listen to this really bad quality because I didn't know about tapes, and I was using the cheapest ferrite type 1 tapes, and it was just awful, but I loved it. I would listen to those tapes on the Walkman and on my tape deck for hours and hours, and I didn't care. But I didn't feel any remorse or regret or guilt for doing that sort of thing, because I still, if there was an artist I really liked, I'd still go and buy the original.
That's true,
because it was never as good as owning that original piece of cassettes were a bit weird, because you'd pull out that tiny little bit and it'd like roll out to the side, and you'd be reading lyrics at 1 point fonts. But that was sort of my first thing. But yeah, like records and then eventually CDs, and you get the CDs with the cool like Pearl Jam would always do cool inserts with like postcards and other things. And yeah, so there's always been that relationship between the not paying for it and the pirating it, and then actually wanting to support artists. And I think it's cool now that the albums I buy, like I bought a vinyl from an artist, a vinyl. I bought a record. Hey, people will say, "Oh, I bought some vinyls." I bought a record from an artist that I don't have a record player, but I just really like this artist and I wanted to support them, so I bought their LP. And it's sitting unwrapped on my shelf because it's really cool album art and I really like this person. So I think there's a lot of that goes on these days. And that's, again, even though Negative Johns was ranting on the problems of capitalism before, I think that's what's good now is that the Patreon community and the Bandcamp community and this community of supporting the artist over and above the brand of the music. I think that's a really cool thing. Like you're actually engaging and having sometimes parasocial, but often social relationships with artists. Like I've Instagram DM'd artists and got a response back and gone, oh, they know I exist. And that's the thing you couldn't do in the past. And that'll make me go out and buy a physical album of that artist because they took the time to put one little heart on one little Instagram message where I said, hey, I saw your gig last night and it was really cool, Ben Lee. I love you. And then Ben Lee puts a heart there and I go and buy the new Ben Lee album. So I kind of like that. That's the new world, and it's pretty cool.
Even though you mentioned parasocial there, you know, parasocial for some people, parasocial relationships with content creators and musicians and stuff can go wrong because some people, their mental health isn't in the right place and they can take things the entire wrong way and think that you're talking to them directly and they fall in love with you and then they want to come to your house and kill you. These things happen, but there's the difference is back in the day it was up to a magazine or a television show to interview an artist and the narrative could be controlled, where now I think you really get to know an artist better and the artist has more control over how they're perceived and what they believe in and who they really are, where back in the day you could do an interview, even now when you do an interview, and you can get totally taken out of context and turned into a monster very easily with print press and all that kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
It's an advantage.
If I had a publicist, there's no way they'd let me come on your show and talk about communism and socialism because all you need to do is clip that out and it's just like why Pete Johns is a communist and thinks no one should ever make money. Like, because you can misconstrue things very easily, and we all have the freedom to say things. And you know what? It's why, oh God, I didn't want to go down this track, but why cancel culture is such a thing these days is because people have the freedom to be able to go onto platforms when they're drunk at 3 o'clock in the morning, Elon Musk, and make statements that come straight out of their drug-fueled. Oh, see, now I'm defaming someone who may choose to do that. Allegedly, may say something that they then go back and regret. And if they had a publicist and they could only talk to media outlets where they had control over the narrative, that wouldn't happen. So we wouldn't get the situations where folks were getting cancelled because no one knew that they were actually a horrible, horrific racist.
I was watching a really cool video the other day on the manifestation of vinyl to CD to tape CD, and how the record industry really had a control over everything. The labels, because vinyl you couldn't make it, you couldn't recreate vinyl, you had to buy vinyl. Then cassettes came out, and the record industry absolutely shit themselves because here's now you can tape. As soon as there was an option on a tape recorder to record music, that's when they totally shit themselves. So they jumped into the tape market, right? And you remember you would buy a cassette and the top pins were popped out of a purchased cassette, whereas a blank cassette had the pins in. And if you wanted to record over a purchased cassette, you just put sticky tape over the top and you're good. But it went further to say this is why CDs were created, to try and steer people back away from piracy. But who knew that just around the corner, Sony was developing a CD burner, which totally fucked everything up for them. So that's why there's this period of time with CDs that were, here's CDs, and then we moved to digital. But people are always going to find a way to get music. Why? Because music's the shit, man. We all love music. We can't live without it. It's the international language of human beings. It's the way we emote, and we could go down that rabbit hole. So
yeah, and again, I'm going off on so many tangents. I'm coming off very. I don't mean to be negative, but I think I'm being realistic today. But when you think of copyright, like people get carried away about copyright. They're like, you're stealing my stuff, you're stealing my music. The whole purpose of copyright was to give producers of things, whether they are ideas or music or products, a little bit of time. And originally it was considered to be like 1 to 2 years. So it's like a patent, it's like a trademark. It's to give you a year or two so that you can be the exclusive person to use a particular thing. And then after that, the idea was that it's opened up to the greater good of society. But we kind of forgot that when a little mouse company came on board and just kept trying to prolong the a level of copyright to the now that we're at a point at like 70 years plus the lifetime of the person or something ridiculous. That kind of removed that. And it's going to be weird. Like 50 years' time is going to be super weird because a lot of really cool stuff's going to come out of copyright. And the level of creativity that people are going to be able to do. Can you imagine taking the original stems of a Beatles song and remixing it and being able to release that because it's public domain at that point? Like, that's really cool. Like, I like that concept. But at the moment, we're still stuck in this whole ownership thing. And again, the risk of coming off like a hippie, you create something and you put it out into the world, and it's supposed to be a betterment of the world. It's supposed to be providing something that everyone can benefit from, as opposed to you being able to monetize it exclusively forever, which I think is the way that it's kind of morphed into over time. And it's the same with distribution. Like when I look at things like, and getting back to, DistroKid and things like this, the permanency of saying, oh, I wouldn't use a distributor that you have to pay a yearly fee because it's not going to be on places forever. I'm like, how long is forever? Like these days, forever's not that long. What was the forever of MySpace? 6 years? What's the forever of Facebook
Not
going to
long
be?
enough.
Hopefully 10 years. No. But yeah, the forever of Friendster and of MySpace and of Napster, all of these platforms, there is no forever anymore, and there really never has been. So I think, yeah, getting your knickers in a twist about the lack of permanency of media. Even a hard drive, even a record is going to get scratched and broken over time. James was just talking about his like, having to tape back together his Justice for All tape. Like the things break over time. So
yeah, absolutely. And speaking of, what a segue, Pete. Speaking of DistroKid, we're at the halfway point of our show, and you are a DistroKid user as well as being sponsored by DistroKid. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, DistroKid gives you the ability these days to very easily release music to all of these major companies that pretty much are the place to go now. This is where we are, Spotify, Apple, and more popping up when you go over here. So just before I jump over there, do I have the page here? I can go here. If you look at all these companies here, you can click. Can you click on them from here? Yes, you can. Oh no, I can't from here. So if I go back and upload a new song, upload music, let's do that. So look at them all: Spotify, TikTok, Deezer, Savan. Is that how you say it? Tencent. They make video games, for God's sake. Adapter, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Tidal, Boomplay, Qobuz, Flow, iTunes, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Angami, Jokes. That sounds like a joke, doesn't it? MediaNet, Instagram, Facebook, Pandora, Clara Musica, NetEase, Knuck Media, and Snapchat. This is where your music can go, even places you have no idea, and they are selling your music as well for the incredibly low price of $22.99 a year. That's what, $2 a month, pretty much, just under. And you can do so if you use my code, which is up the top there, distrokid.com/VIP/Jade. Gets 7% off your first year. But one of the things that they offer here, Pete, and you talk about this on your show as well, and I think we both use this. This is the thing with DistroKid. When we joined up, there wasn't all this stuff. It was just your songs are out there. And now when you click on here, you've got Get Heard Now, Promote Yourself, Special Access, Enhance Your Music, Protect Your Music, all these little things that they're adding on and just continue to grow for you to have some tools to actually get some people to listen. And one of my favorites that you talk about on your show too is slaps.com. Tell us about slaps.com, Pete, because you promote the hell out of this thing.
I love slaps.com. So think SoundCloud before it added all the things it probably shouldn't have added. So slaps.com is just a very basic, simple music sharing platform. So you sign up, you create an account, you listen to other people's music and you like it, you can throw fire on it, you can comment on it, and you can interact with other folks' music. And then you can release your songs onto slaps.com. You can link it to your Spotify and your other places. So if you are distributing it as well, you can put little links there so folks can jump over to that version. But it's just a place where you can upload a demo version, a remix version, a sort of pre-release version, or even the final release, and other folks can come in there and experience it. And it's a wonderful music discovery engine. It's the new Napster. So if you want to just discover artists and bands that maybe you hadn't thought of before, and you can go in by genre. So if I'm in a punk mood, I'll just go in and check out punk. And the other day I found an amazing punk band from Austria, and I'm like, this is just amazing. I've never have thought to listen to Austrian punk, but it's like bloody amazing. And and DistroKid provide that for free. So if you're a DistroKid member, you can use your DistroKid account. If you're not, you can sign up for free and share music. And the cool thing they have there is the CTR, so their comment to track ratio, which means you can't just be someone who goes in there and just spams people with your music like folks do on YouTube groups. You have to actually comment on 5 tracks for every 1 track that you upload. So I just think it's a I call it DistroKid Lite because it's like getting the idea of what it would feel like to have your music out there. And then once you're like, hey, this is actually really cool, and I'd love to put a little link to Spotify there, then you can send your music out to the rest of the world.
Yeah, look, what's really good about it, it very much represents this YouTube indie music community that we have too, because everyone goes and comments on each other's stuff, and it's very, it's very much like that. And, having a service that forces you to go and listen to people's songs before you think about yourself and put your own stuff up is a really good idea. This is one of the songs, I think, when did we make this? This was the 8-bar challenge.
Well, I woke up with 8 bars, needed somewhere to put them.
God, those times, those old days, Pete, when we used to. Oops, we don't need to play this. Stop. Paul says this too. You do get rubbish comments though, just to put up ratios. There are. Look, this is the thing, isn't it? We're always going to have, no matter. Yep. I swear, there is always a total who wants to come in and ruin everything for everyone. So that, unfortunately, what are you going to do? They're out there. So
yeah, and look, it's the same on SoundCloud. Like people slide into your DMs and they're like, "Yo, bruh, I loved your fire beat PM me. I want to help you get the exposure onto playlists." And yeah, it's the same sort of stuff everywhere. Unfortunately, you need to just have your critical thinking hat on at all times and realize that but you'll tell the difference. Like you can tell. It's like when you go onto eBay or Gumtree and you're that person that's got the bracket 0 next to their name, like you're not going to trust anything that they say or do, and you're not going to accept that they're going to pay you later after you've sent the item. It's the same with this sort of stuff. You consider the source, you go and you check out their profile, you'll very quickly find out whether they're a legitimate person or whether they're just a spammer trying to be a dick.
Absolutely. So once again, thank you, DistroKid, for sponsoring the show. We love you so much, DistroKid. And that is that. Let's come back over here because I want to talk. Let's get back to Apple and Spotify because this is where we're at now. We've caught up. We've done the first hour. We've talked about the history of digital distribution. We've got on our high horse a couple of times. And here we are. We're at digital distribution where there are multiple companies out there who do this, right? Now, as I said at the beginning of the show, I'm not going into all of the companies that are out there that do digital distribution because there are many. Right? And that is up to you to do your own homework and what is going to work for you because that is always the most important thing. And just looking here are this is just a short list from the internet. TuneCore, CD Baby, DistroKid, AWOL, is that you say, Lander, Amuse, Ditto Music, Root Note, United Masters Union, Record Union, Reverb Nation, they still do stuff as well, even though the amount of spam is ridiculous. Symphonic Distribution, Fresh Tunes, 1RPM, Horace Music, STEM. So in other words, there's so many of these places who do distribution and they all offer differing services. Some might offer things like APRA services for your royalty, radio play royalty. There's so many different places. It is best for you to go and seek out what works for you. But as the thing is, the beautiful thing for us as musicians is as more of these companies come into the space and they offer more things, everyone tries to outdo each other and they keep trying to add more things. So we end up being the people who benefit from it the most. You know, they may go up over time, over a small few years, a few dollars or so, but they're trying, you know, they're all adding new things. So, and what does a digital distribution company do, Pete? Please let us know what they do for us.
Well, yeah, the simplest way to explain this is that they give you the opportunity. So if you consider something like Spotify, people ask me this question. They're like, how do I get my music on Spotify? And they're thinking, hey, I'll go to Spotify, I'll hit an upload button because they've got this basis from like YouTube or other places. I'll hit the upload button and I'll send my music to Spotify and then they'll stream it for me. What you do need to do that, though, is a middle person. You need a company in between called a distributor, a digital distribution company that can actually send it to the music streaming platforms for you. So the beauty part is, as Jade showed there before in the promo, with DistroKid, you upload it once. So you upload your album artwork, you upload your high resolution WAV file, you put in your metadata like your artist name, your track title, your lyrics, all the rest of it, and then you send that off. And what the distributor does is it has relationships with all the online streaming platforms. So it can then put those out to those platforms and make sure that they're in the right format, make sure that all the right information is sent through so that your music can be out there. So historically, before streaming, digital distribution was to put it onto iTunes. So that was kind of the be all and end all. And you'd say, all right, I want to sell my music for 99 cents. I'm going to go through a distributor and put it over to iTunes. And I think TuneCore were like the first, if not one of the first. And that was what a lot of people used TuneCore for really early on, because they kind of had almost a monopoly on that. As streaming started kicking in, TuneCore started sending it to iTunes, but also to Apple Music. And then Spotify came about. So it went to Spotify and then YouTube Music, Amazon, Tidal, Deezer, all those ones you looked at before that not many of us have heard of, but I'm sure in whatever region that they're in, they're popular and get your music out there anyway. So they just sort of keep track of all of that stuff so that you don't have to go and approach individual. It's kind of like a publishing deal, like you've got newspapers and things where if someone writes an article, they'll send it out to all the Murdoch newspapers, and then all those newspapers, the individual newspapers, can publish that article. Kind of the same with your music. You don't want the sending and the releasing to all those platforms.
Essentially, yeah. What they do is they send it to all the places and they collect your royalties.
That's probably the best second part of it, is that they collect the royalties. So the back way, so you get it out there and you get it out to the world, and then they report back to the distribution platform and say, Pete Johns had, I was going to say a million streams. Let's go realistic. Pete Johns had 27 streams last month. So here's 43 cents for those 27 streams. And then they report that back. And different distributors may, and I know we're not sort of talking DistroKid specifically, but one of the things I like about DistroKid is that they give you 100% of your royalties. So some distributors will actually take a cut at that point and they'll keep anywhere from like 5% to 20% of your royalties. And it's probably the one thing that I'll mention there around choosing a distributor is check the fine print and make sure, especially the cheaper or freer a distributor is, the more likely they are to be keeping some of your royalties or doing something else that could be jeopardizing your ownership of the songs or something else. So yeah, you don't have to be a lawyer, but at least sort of read through the FAQ or the fine print to make sure that you retain ownership and that you're getting 100% of royalties. That would be my tip.
Yeah, the best advice I can give you with digital distribution, because I've been in on the ground floor since the first one, TuneCore. I was with TuneCore way back, 2007. I think I joined TuneCore. And man, there was a different time then. To release an album was $50. That's it. Yep. Every album, $50. Every song was like $10. And you had to pay that every year. That $50 and I had multiple albums up there, and it was coming to from 2007 all the way up to, I think I stopped using them about 2014 or something like that. It was coming up to like $350 to $400 a year for me to keep all my music up there. It was just like, whoa, this is a lot. But my best advice is what Pete said. Look, if you're signing up to some social media or eBay or whatever, none of us read the terms and conditions. But please please, if you're signing up to a digital distribution company, go read them. It is important because there are companies out there, like Pete said, who the cheaper or the freer it is, that's the point. They may have the ability, if your songs blow up, that they can use your music to sell, to actually take over and become or they'll make an offer to you. And the fine print is important sometimes. I know people see free all the time and just go, yeah, but remember, you are the product at the end of the day, and they are going to do everything they can to make as much out of you as possible if they're not charging you.
That's it. You just got to think to yourself, how is this company making money? And people say that things like, payment processing fees are annoying, or things like add-ons are annoying if you add them, or that paying a yearly subscription fee is annoying. But if that company is not making enough money to stay in business, guess what? Your music's no longer anywhere, because if the distributor shuts down, you're no longer going to be able to get your music out there to the world. And there's no guarantee that it would even stay up there if the distributor shut down. So even though, as Jade showed that page before, there's a lot of new up and coming distributors. And hey, if you want to try it for free and you want to roll the dice with it, be my guest, go for it. You're a big person, and you do you, boo. But just keep in mind that if you can't see how this company could possibly make money, they're either not, in which case they might not be long for this world, or they are, and they're doing it by selling your data to Russian gangsters. At the end of the day. Take that out of context. Pete says that distributors sell your data to Russian gangsters.
So specific. Now, I've had a lot of people ask, but how does this happen? Because, all right, so you just say you're with DistroKid or any of these companies, you upload your songs, you upload your lyrics and all this kind of stuff. What happens next? What do these digital distribution companies do? Because sometimes there have been instances, and I'm sure if people here have tried to release their music, no matter what digital distribution company, they've received an email going, no. We're not going to accept that artwork. There's something wrong with it. You're going to have to fix that up and send it back. So is this the digital distribution company that's telling us that there's a problem, or is there somebody in the background pulling the puppet strings there, Pete?
I'll nice little lob there, and I'll stash it into the back of the court so that you can share your experience. Because I haven't actually ever had a piece of album artwork rejected. Right. Funnily enough, fence sitter Pete, all conservative John's over here. But yes, there are definitely rules, and there are rules put in place by Apple Music. Apple Music have some pretty strict guidelines around how your track titles need to be formatted, how your album artwork needs to be formatted. Spotify, the same sort of deal. So the distributors kind of create their own guidelines and rules based around what the different platforms will accept. And look, every platform has their own rules and regulations, but most of them follow what Apple and Spotify do because it's in their best interest to be aligned when it comes to that sort of thing. So yes, you can spend a fun weekend going through the Apple album art guidelines. And I know that you have looked at those in some detail, Jade, and the same with things like lyrics and things like the way that you need to structure your metadata to go in there, making sure that you use your own actual real name as the songwriter if you want to link it to royalties and publishing, which we'll probably touch on a bit more later. But yeah, there are some important guidelines that are set by the platforms as opposed to the distributor kind of have to play by the rules. They'll have some of their own rules, but they're usually in place because of what the end platform has told them need to be in place.
Yes, absolutely. And that thing is called a style guide.
Style guide.
Style guide. So we're going to tell you we're going to show you what the style guide is. And
must be stylish.
And where you can find it, because it is important. I need to just do one thing here. Sorry. Guess what, Pete? They sent me that code.
Too late again.
It's all done now, hey. So at least we can talk about this later on. That's cool. So let's go to our style guide. And now Apple have a style guide. And guess what? Spotify have one as well. And I'm sure Tidal and all the other companies have their own style guide as well. And it sounds lovely, doesn't it, the style guide? What is it? This is the style guide. I think this is the current version of the Apple Music style guide. And wow, is this a read? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff in here, and it's
And the good news is it's constantly changing,
It
which makes it
constantly is.
really easy because if you look at things like capitalization, capitalization used to be massive until places like TikTok came along and the kids don't capitalize anything anymore. So they now are a lot more lenient with accepting things like non-capitalized track titles because it's a style choice now, apparently. It's like ripped jeans. You used to never be able to wear ripped jeans into a pub, and now you basically have to if you want to be fashionable to get into a pub. So yeah, it's the same sort of thing that unfortunately things do, and this is why people get frustrated because they're like, "Oh, they changed it, and the goalposts keep moving, and things keep changing." It's like, welcome to life. I don't know what to tell you. It's gonna change, but yeah, usually you'll get, like you said, with the distributor. You'll submit it. Things will be yellow, little yellow dot for a while all the checks and balances go in place. DistroKid or whoever you distribute with check it at their end. And if they get the tick, it goes off. But that doesn't always mean because it's hard for them to keep up to date with everything. And sometimes arbitrarily, you'll just get rejected for reason and it'll come back to you to try again, in which case you have to try something different, which I know you've been through a couple of times in the past, Jade.
Yeah, and people get frustrated with the digital distribution company going, well, hang on, you're not giving me a specific answer. But the real deal is that the actual digital distribution company isn't getting the real answer either. Because the major company like Apple just sends a very generic thing and they don't specify what the actual problem is. For example, one of my albums, a Utensils album that I released, kept coming back as there was an issue. And I'm going to try and find the artwork here for you. Let's go on to Utensils. Where are we? U-10 cells. Because this one, my brain was lost over this for so long. It took me at least 2 weeks to work this out, what the problem was. Here we are. Where's the artwork? It's for this album art here. Okay, so here's the album artwork, and you can see it's got like a D-Wave computer in the back. It's got a little man, and it's got a brain on a plate. And when I made the artwork, and it's not on here anymore because I had to change it, on the brain, on the plate, I had put logos in there because the concept of the album is that companies take over and get control of our brain with these new developments that like maybe Elon Musk might be making, and they implant the images of big tech companies into our brains, and that's how we become loyal. They stamp our brains, and that was the concept of the album. It turns out you can't put certain companies' logos on artwork. And on that logo, I had D-Wave, I had Apple, I had Microsoft, and the main problem was they didn't mind about having Apple's logo because it was Apple that was rejecting it. They don't want you to have competitors because that, and I didn't know this, and it took so long to try and work this shit out that finally I was like, I wonder if it's the logos. So the logos still are there. I just made them more transparent. And then it got rejected again. And then I made them so transparent that you just kind of can't see them. But these are things. And these are in the fine minutiae of the style guide. So I think it's good for everybody to go and look at the style guide and look for some of the more obscure stuff. What's the good thing now is that digital distribution companies, when you're doing your upload of your music, they give you pointers now. So you actually have little question marks there that you can click on and get a little bit more context of what they mean in certain areas. So if we show you here, let's go over to upload music, just for DistroKid, for example. You can see when we get down to things like, oh, maybe they don't these days. Have they removed that kind of stuff? But no, it says don't include featured artists for cover song. So they do give you little tips and points at least to know what to do. But if you ever do get lost, the Apple Style Guide is there. And there is another one. So let me grab this. The Spotify, I love this, confidential, it says. The confidential Spotify Music Metadata Style Guide version 2.2. So look at all this stuff. Compilations, karaoke and tribute content, mixes, remixes, titles. There's a lot of stuff in here it's a lot of wank, isn't it, Pete?
Yeah, look, and many of you probably work in corporate environments, and Jade and I have worked in corporate environments before, and these things exist. And look, in a world that they didn't exist, it would be kind of pandemonium because
Yep.
like it would look unprofessional for a company to not have some alignment and to not have style guides in place. But again, they're written by lawyers because they have to be like airtight and they're written in a lot of legalese. So that's why like at the distribution company level, they kind of synthesize this down. And if you go to say, again, we'll say DistroKids because that's what I'm familiar with. If you go to DistroKids album artwork guidelines, it's like 10 points and it says, don't use logos or don't use company names, don't put hashtags, don't put anything in text that's not the name of the artist or the name of the album. So don't put follow me on Bandcamp or hashtag awesome artist.
No web
Fire me.
addresses, no web address or email.
Yeah, and so it gives you those basic guidelines to work with, and then you'll do okay. And I think another thing, I'll shout out some of the communities that we hang out in. So there's lots of Facebook groups and Discord places and ways that you can hang out with people to share your album artwork. And many of us have been down these channels before. And if you share a piece of album artwork and say, hey, looking to release my first single, how does this look? We'll say, yeah, that blurriness in that image looks like you've upscaled a low resolution image. They'll probably reject that. Maybe try and find an image that's going to be higher resolution. Or it's Mickey Mouse's face. You got no hope, mate. So, yeah, I think sharing it and getting some knowledge and feedback from other people that have done it before is probably another good tip. And look, it's why I started making videos about distributing music in the first place, is because I didn't know how to do it. And I knew other people would be struggling with it as well, because it's one of those things that's really, really simple at its basic level until something goes wrong. And then it gets ridiculously complicated. So it is so much better to go in with a planned approach and to make sure everything's good. You know, that whole measure twice, cut once of the old woodworker. Do that. Like, make sure everything is all 100% and check it, double check it, triple check it, and then send it through, because it's so much easier to get it right up front than it is to go back and try and edit it or try and fix it after the fact.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as making music. Get it right at the source. Don't rely on some app to fix a problem. You've got a million retakes. You're at home. You're not in a studio paying the big bucks, that you haven't earned from being a musician. So, you have the ability to do it. Get it right. Make sure you cross all your T's and dot all of your I's, because it is important. Now, the one thing that confuses me was, that artwork. Now, I do know now trademarked logos, all that kind of stuff. But back then, those help guides weren't on DistroKid at the time. It's only because things like this have probably come up numerous times that they've had to add that. But it always would make me laugh that something like that held up a song. But I can have a band called Filthy Maggoty and, release songs that are so disgustingly vile, and they just get through no problem at all.
It is funny and quite hard to understand sometimes exactly how these decisions are made by the different platforms. But again, it's the way I look at this is that we don't own the companies, and they're a private company that can choose to do whatever the heck they want. So we're kind of at their mercy. It's my old you can drink now, building your house on borrowed land, and it's the same thing with this sort of stuff. You are putting your stuff out there to Spotify or Apple Music. Guess what? You got to play by Spotify or Apple Music's rules, or you're in trouble. I noticed there Moby Pixel has asked about PROs or performing rights organisations, and I know you've got some info about AMCOS here in Australia and some stuff to share on that. So we won't forget to talk about that, because that's kind of another part of the distribution puzzle. Absolutely.
We can talk about that right now. Let's jump to it. So here and now, I can only speak on here in Australia, because we only live here in Australia, and we have our own. So as I said earlier, there are certain digital distribution labels out there that do offer you a service. I know after watching Crimson Crux on Thomas's show, they use CD Baby, and they offer this as part of a plan where they will sort out your performance rights and send that off all for you. I myself, here in Australia, we have AMCOS, so the Australia Performance Recording Association. Is that what it is? I think
something like that. I never remember.
It is something like that. So here is my account. Yes, and I've been using this for the longest time, way before digital distribution came along, and basically it used to be so different. Let's talk about how it used to be. I love going down the memory lane. When I first signed up to APRA, you actually had to do it by mail. Remember that thing? You'd have to get an application and post it in with all of your details, and then they'd send you back a collection of cardboard cards. And each of these cards had a whole lot of stuff like name of song, duration of song lyrics, and all this stuff. And you'd have to fill in these cards and put them all together in an envelope and post them back to APRA. And they would then add them to your little file of copyrighted songs. So if your song gets played on the radio, then they collect what the royalties, because basically how it works, guys, is radio, pubs, anything that television, all this kind of stuff, media. Whenever they play something of yours, they have running sheets. Now, I've worked in radio and had to do these running sheets, and I've worked in pubs and do this. If it's a legit pub, lots of pubs used to kind of shirk it. Mm-hmm. Whenever a band plays, they do. The laws are here in Australia that if you play at a gig in a pub, you have to provide the pub with a running sheet of the songs that you played, and the pub has to submit that running sheet at the end of a certain time each month or whatever to APRA, and then APRA take that information, match it up with your songs that are listed with them, and then in November, I think, then you get a big, fat, juicy check. And it used to work for things like mp3.com. They actually included a MySpace and mp3.com back in the day because it was all new and Wild West. But yes, I have been using APRA here for the longest time. It's normally, SOCAN is in Canada. You can do this yourself. You don't need to rely on a digital distribution service to do this. You can just go in there. The thing that always amazed me about this, Pete, is that I can just go on there right now and submit a song and just make up a fucking name and just make up a bunch of lyrics, make up how long it goes for, and just put it up there as a placeholder for a song that I haven't even written yet. Right.
And this is, and again, full disclosure, I'm not an expert on this stuff. I've actually never joined a performing rights organization, which is horrible. I should have. I've been a singer-songwriter for 10 years and I've never done it. So I need to. So this will hopefully prompt me to actually get off my ass and go and do that. But yeah, so there's things like PRS in the UK, there's BMI and another one in the US, and it's all the same. So the idea of these organizations is that they protect musicians' royalties, and these are different from your streaming royalties. That's probably the other thing to consider. This is for things like radio airplay, for live music airplay, for shopping center airplay. Yes. And if you've ever been to those places here in Australia, like if you go into a cafe, you'll often see it's got a little APRA sticker on the front, and that's basically to say, dear Mr. APRA inspector that's going to come around here and bust me for not having an APRA license to play commercial music, I actually do have that. And when I actually worked, I didn't work, I volunteered for the Australian Ice Hockey League, and I was an announcer, and we played music. We played copyrighted commercial music. And I found out about 6 months in that they did not, in fact, have an APRA license. And we found out that because the president of the hockey club got an email from APRA saying, our inspectors attended your venue. Your venue is classed as a 500 capacity venue. You don't have an APRA license. If you don't fix this within the next 3 months, you will be fined a large sum of money. So it was kind of my first awakening to exactly that, of that, yeah, if you are playing commercial music, you're playing other people's music. From the flip side of it, you have to actually have a license to be able to do that. And that's how they pay artists. You might think, where does this pool of money actually come from? The venues and the places that are playing commercial music pay a fee to the performing rights organization, or if you're an online radio station, it's why places like Pandora and all of these online radio stations simply can't afford to exist anymore, because if they want to play commercial music, they have to pay to play the commercial music. And yeah, if you don't have it, you can be in some serious trouble. So yeah, it's an interesting world, and it's one that I need to get into before I have any more songs. I've got something like 67 songs released through DistroKid, so I've got a lot of work to do. I have to pay one of my children to go through and submit all my songs to APRA.
I'm going to just show you here. I'm trying to make sure I don't give away any personal things. So as you can see here, here's my list. Like this is Dog is for Life, Adult Sitter Needed, Bottled Tears, Buying Into Fear. There's a bunch of these songs which I don't play anymore. Explanation, Exquisite Pain, Face, Freak, All my songs here are all listed. I have 4 pages of songs. Just let me bounce over here. We'll bounce to another page. Make sure I'm not giving anything away. So yes, if we, there we go. I don't think the work ID is going to be a problem anyway. Throwing Stones, True Friends, Undexterous Clown, Truth. All my songs are up here and registered and ready to go. Now, I'm not going to go in to show you all my earnings because it shows my bank account details, so I can't do that. But just to give you an idea how important this is, and Peter, you know I say this to you all the time, it is important. You should sign up to these guys. Last year alone, just from radio and stuff, because, you know, I'll just give you an insight of my music. I'm pretty shit at promoting my stuff through Spotify and Apple Music, but I'm really good. I'm still such an old school loser that I do send a lot of my stuff to actual terrestrial radio, real radio here in Australia. And I think last year, my earnings I'm just looking up here, last year, my earnings just from APRA alone was $790.
Nice.
That just came at
worth
November. Now, I think my best year of APRA earnings was about $3,500. That's when I was touring and gigging, because you're submitting, if you're on it and you're submitting these works, and every time the radio's doing the right thing, I was getting doing radio interviews, you are getting these royalties and they add up, and APRA collects them all for you, and they don't even send you a check. You just look in your bank account and it's like, what? $3,500. So it is absolutely worth it to do it. And that's why I recommend, doing it yourself. I know it's a lot of work, but monitor it yourself, put in your songs, because you don't have to rely on releasing a song through a digital distribution company. You can go ahead and put demos up there as well, just in case. I know, because people get scared. Because that's what we're going to talk about next. People getting scared about their songs being stolen. Right? Relax.
Relax. It's going to be fine. Yeah, no, it's true. And I'm looking forward to talking about that, because I'll probably get on my soapbox again and have a wee rant on that. Just so folks know, I think the GJ said they've got a question. In fact, there it is. Yes. So if you do have questions, we'll sneak some Q&A. But knowing me and Jade, and the fact that we're doing my podcast in 23 minutes, throw your questions in now, and we'll bank them and answer them where we can.
How do I bank them? I'm not good at that stuff, Pete. You're the good one at that.
I'll keep an eye on them. There's another one from Manny from earlier, which I've already got here. So I'll talk to that.
This is why I have you on. You're the pro. I'm the dickhead here. I'm a shit host. What can I say? Where are we? So yeah, there's a brief outlay of that. I do recommend it. I know it probably doesn't feel as relevant if you're not gigging and stuff like that. But hey, look. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Let me just get on my high horse for a second. Don't put all your eggs in one basket and sit just on digital distribution and Bandcamp. Hit up radio stations. Hit up internet radio stations. I've done a whole show on this and had guests on, Andy from the Indigo Sunsets, and we've talked about this kind of stuff. Terrestrial radio there's so many independent radio stations out there. Old school radio, they're still playing music, and even more and more. Even BBC these days are looking for unsigned artists and things like that. And the Indigo Sunsets prove that by getting their music played on there. You can hit these bigger. The bigger the radio station, they're starting to see value in unsigned artists and stuff like that, because they're desperately looking for artists to play and be hip and be cool. Get the young listeners in and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Take advantage of the fact that people want to have those 1,000 tries and see if they can find that one diamond in the rough. So you may be the diamond in the rough, and you won't know till you try. So as much as I may have sounded negative in the first hour, I wanted to flip that around in the second hour and say, but you might as well try. Like, don't be despondent, because you might as well try, because why not you? It's going to be someone. Why not you? You might have just that a certain flavor, that certain sound at that right time, and that's what people will resonate with. So give it a crack.
Now, Bandcamp is another thing out there. Let's talk briefly about Bandcamp. It's another great place to go. And I know there are some people out there that are like, I just use Bandcamp instead of streaming. They can be used in tandem together, right? And the good thing is, even when you release music, if you've released music through a streaming service, you can then take your the UPC, well, I can't remember what it's
ISRC.
ISRC code, which is a code for each individual track that you release. And when you release music on Bandcamp, you can put that ISRC code into each individual song on Bandcamp as well, which is registering plays and such. And all of these things are super important. And those ISRC codes can be used with companies like APRA when you upload your performance rights stuff. So all this stuff does tie together. It's just hard to keep it all. There's so much to do, you know.
It's the admin of it, and to be honest, that's why a lot of people do want like a record label or a publishing deal or to work with other people because. But again, you will pay for that. So if you're an independent creator, you're going to have to put the effort in to actually get stuff done, but it means that you reap any of those rewards. You don't have to share any of those with other folks as well. But I really believe in that. Like I've only just got into Bandcamp. This guy, Thomas Christ, actually helped me get my stuff onto Bandcamp recently, and I've got one album there, but I do need to get the rest of my music there because I think for the reasons I mentioned earlier, there's some people that will want to support you, and if they're a savvy person, they will know that the best way to do that isn't to, sit and bot stream your songs on Spotify for 4 hours. It is to spend $10 and buy your album on Bandcamp because you'll get a lot more of that actual money more directly. Someone buys your album on Bandcamp, you kind of get paid within a couple of days. If someone streams your song or even buys it on iTunes, it can take up to 3 months. And that's probably another thing to mention with we talked about royalties before. Don't be in a hurry with any of this stuff because it does take 3 months, sometimes 4 months for all the platforms to report back to your distributor for you to actually get paid. So a lot of people like release a song, they're like, I just had 10,000 streams yesterday. Why haven't I been paid today? And it's like, you'll be paid in 90 days and there's nothing you can do about that. And you're just going to have to accept it. So but I think that having that joint strategy of saying, let's release to all the streaming platforms. So if I meet someone in a pub, then I can just say, just go to Spotify and search Pete Johns and you'll find my stuff. But at the same time, having a link to Bandcamp where if they sort of go down the rabbit hole of following the Pete Johns experience and they're like, I want to help this Pete Johns critter, then they can buy the album if they want to and support me that way.
Because there's a large group of the music community, listeners and musicians, who are a bit like, F the digital distribution companies because, because of the situation with Spotify and the little money that they pay. And there are people out there, a lot of people I've seen from my experience who would rather buy your music and own it and say, I'll go to Bandcamp and actually buy it, get the option of downloading WAV files and keeping that stuff. And they feel like they're actually really supporting the artist, because now everything is like, $10 streaming a month, unlimited stuff, and it seems so good, but it really is.
I talk about this a lot. The amount of money I used to spend on music as a consumer has reduced significantly. So when I was a kid, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, and I made like $300 a week, I would buy at least 3 CDs a week at $30 a pop. So about 30 to 35% of my income was going on music. If anyone spent 30 to 35% of their income on music these days, I'd be very, very surprised. Short of the absolute, colored disc vinyl collectors that we were talking about before. If it's your absolute passion, then maybe you can find a way. But the vast majority of people spending 10 to 15 bucks a month for a streaming service and then listening to 100 hours of music. Whereas in the past, to get that amount of music, they would have to spend a lot more. So it's not just the evil streaming company's fault. We as consumers want to spend less money, which is fair enough because, bit of a crunch, bit of a cost of living crisis going on at the moment.
Yep.
So no one can afford to sign up to multiple streaming platforms. So it is kind of like this circular thing. And it means that some of the best ways are to use things like Patreon, things like Bandcamp that are more direct creator to consumer platforms that people can support you through.
Well, who can afford to go out and buy records and CDs and buy all this stuff for the price of electricity and all that stuff? It's, my rent in my apartment here is starting to get up to $2,000 a month. you kidding me?
Yep.
Just
Got $1,000 electricity bill just last week.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it just happens. Everything is super expensive and going up. And entertainment is going up as well. Not to mention, we've got streaming video, which is a
Movies,
direct
TV,
competitor,
yep.
movies and TV. So if you're paying your Hulu or your Netflix bill, you're not gonna some people might just go, well, I'll go back to the free Spotify with the ads because I can't afford that and Netflix, and they're gonna take Netflix over Spotify. So we'll see some continued crunches and some continued changes, but that's what we just have to adapt to and accept, because what's the alternative?
I'm completely brain broken, Pete, and there was something I mentioned before that we're going to talk about. Now I can't remember what it was, but let's do Q&A, I think.
I'll see if there's anything alternative options. I mean, features of DistroKid, I think we've talked about a lot of that sort of stuff as well. So I think we're pretty good. So we can probably jump to the Q&A in the last 10 minutes and then give us 5 minutes for a comfort stop before you join me on my podcast and we talk about lyrics.
Absolutely. So one of them here, because I have it fresh, I can't go back and grab Manny's one.
That's all right. I've got that here.
How do I make a song drop in 2 profiles via DistroKid, mine and a friend's, but not as easy as it appears on? Not as an appears on, but on the main list of profile. Is that even possible?
Not really.
It isn't.
So sort of is the answer. And weirdly, I'm actually working. Shall I reveal it here? Shall I give you an exclusive here? It's not really that exclusive because people that listen to YML 200 would have already heard this, but Thomas Christ did an awesome remix of Work in Progress, my Song Timber song from a couple of years back. And Thomas has been kind enough to allow me to release that. So I'm going to be releasing that as a remix through DistroKid. And DistroKid have recently updated the way that you can put a featured artist or a remix artist, which will actually link to that other person's profile in DistroKid, and it will link to their Spotify and Apple artist page and all the rest. So I haven't seen how that works, but all I can say to the GJ is watch this space, because I'm doing that video in the next week, and I'll be your guinea pig. So I'll show you exactly how I do it as Thomas as a remixer, and then you can do the same thing if there's a featured artist, because you used to just have to put feat Thomas Christ or Thomas Christ remix, and now you can actually click it and it brings up and you add them and it links to their account. So you can do it now. I don't know exactly how it works, but it will work. And the other way to do it is splits, but splits doesn't actually put it. So with Jade drumming on my tracks, I put her as a split for the revenue, but that doesn't actually change the track or show on her profile at all. So there's a couple of ways.
Yeah. So watch this space, and I think we mentioned this earlier. Thank you so much, Robert, as well, for the kind $2 super chat. You rock. Let's give you a round of applause. Thank you. Look, the digital distribution space is continuously changing. It honestly is. You and me both have been with DistroKid a long time, and for the last few years, it's always been fascinating opening it up and going, "Oh, what's this?" Well, I didn't know. There's always something that they're adding that I may or may not use, but the tools are out there for you to try these things. What was Manny's question?
He wanted to ask, which is interesting, probably a good thing to chat here too, about video distribution through DistroVid, which I haven't actually used, but I know you have used, and it won't be for everyone. But yeah, a lot of, because of the rise of YouTube and TikTok and all these other places, a lot of people are wanting to put their fully produced music videos out to the world. Tell us a little bit about DistroVid, Jade.
Yes, indeed. I have released a video clip through DistroVid, and this is my World Divided video
My
clip.
favorite song.
And because, there was a pretty rad clip, so I thought it had to go. And it goes to, so these are the places it actually goes to. Is that Vimeo? I think that is.
Yep.
What's this one again? Is that Tidal?
Tidal. Vimeo, Apple, Tidal. And
Apple
Spotify.
Music, and it goes, and DistroKid, you can see it on DistroVid. So the price, where do I find the pricing here? Let me click on it. It's not going to take me there, is it? That would be absolutely right.
Was 99 per year. Am I
think
making
it is.
that up?
No, it is.
99 per year for unlimited videos.
I'll just do a thing. DistroVid pricing. I should know this by heart.
Yeah, there you go. $99 billed annually. $8.25 per month, and it goes to Vivo, goes to Apple Music, TikTok Music, Vivo, Tidal, and Boomplay, which is cool.
Boomplay, yeah. And how that appears on your page, let me show you. I'm going to go to my Apple Music and find Metheist as quick as I can. Come on, Apple music. Metheist. Let's bring this up here. Metheist artist, Metheist. I do believe it appears, there it is. So it appears on your page there. So there's the video clip. So that is how you get a video clip on your page. And it goes to, you get an actual, there is a Vivo channel as well too. So if you go to YouTube, Vivo release, you'll notice many big artists have video clips through the Vivo channel. If I put a Metheist Vivo, will it come up? There it is. There's the Metheist Vivo. So it creates a channel. Let's just stop it from playing, which is Metheist Vivo.
Nice.
And it is a part of the, I don't know what happens when you click it. So if you release more videos on there, they will go there as well and build up. So that's how that works.
And look, I think it's safe to say that it's probably not for everyone. And it's really only if you are producing high quality, highly produced videos and in the nicest possible way. People like me who do lyric videos or just use stock footage or do visualizer videos, that's not what DistroVid is for. It's for folks like Jade who are super creative and create original and highly produced music videos. So think music videos, if you would see it on MTV, that's what you want to release through DistroVid, if MTV actually played clips anymore and not just reality shows. But if you just want to produce your own videos and have more control over things, create a video and release it to YouTube yourself if you want to do lyric videos or visualization videos or whatever else. But if you're getting right into it and you really want to impress and you're making high produced videos, then so the Lily Pillies, Manny, might be something that you guys want to consider, because you make some pretty cool videos of you gallivanting around with the band in Italy and all sorts of cool things. So nicely done.
Answer this question. Still Illa asks about the topic channels because they're very confusing. Well, let me tell you this, because on DistroKid, you can actually combine those topic channels with your YouTube channel. And the way to do that is to go to your DistroKid account. And I'm sure you can do it with a lot of other distributions, but I don't know. I only know here. And it is, I think, special access. And if you scroll down, you will get to YouTube official artist channel. And when you go here, it asks you for your artist. So you can choose one of the artists. And this is the reason I haven't done this, because you can see multiple artists, 1, 2, 3, 6 artists. So combining that with this channel you're on here now wouldn't work, because I have to pick one. So you would choose your artist. So say Jade, Starr, DreadCircus. And then it gives you no, I don't have a YouTube channel, or yes, I have a YouTube channel that contains content from Jade, Starr, DreadCircus and other artists. That's interesting. I haven't seen that before. And other artists. What happens when I click that? It says, sorry, you can't do this. There you go. That's what.
They're protecting you from yourself.
But yes, if you say, yes, I have a YouTube channel, then you just need to link your YouTube channel. Click on here. It'll take you to there. I'm going to close that before it opens up all my details. But you can link your YouTube channel to that, and then it will combine all of those topic songs into your YouTube channel, and you will have all your albums at the top of your page. Somebody like Gary Hubbs has something like that. I think if we'll use Gary as an example. I think you've done that before.
I have. Yep, Gary's a good example.
And what
happens, it's a bad example for some things, but he's a good example for this.
And what happens is your channel changes and it gets this little musical note next to it, which symbolizes that it is now a combined music channel. So he's got all his music videos there, and here are all his releases. So all those topic channels are now here, all placed into lovely little playlists of the albums for you. So yes, absolutely, it is a part of DistroKid. You can do that super easy. Takes a little bit of time. I can't give you a time frame, but and sometimes it disappears. Sometimes you can't do it because there's
it's a bit rad.
An overload of people doing it, and so they kind of turn it off for a bit. But currently, as you can see, you can do it. We're at the end, aren't we? We are at the end of this.
Yeah, I'm going to need to finish because I got to set up for our podcast shortly. But that was amazing. That was a lot of good stuff in there.
I'll let you go.
Thank you.
So, because I'll close off and tell people of some stuff that's coming up here on the channel. So thank you, firstly.
Perfect.
Pete, for being here. If you don't
you,
know,
folks.
have I said a dump? I don't know if I've actually said a
We'll,
dump.
we'll let Jade set a dub, hopefully, if she can do
Yeah,
that quickly before we go over there. But yes, I'll be over there and I'll start things off, and then Jade, you've seen us do this before. Jade will join me if sort of 5 minutes in, and then we'll record the podcast live over on my channel. So that's coming up in just about 6 minutes tall.
And we're talking lyrics and stuff. So come over to Pete's channel. I'll set up the dump, make sure it's all set, and we'll dump you over there. But thank you so much, Pete, for coming on. I love having you on. It's always a pleasure. You're such a wealth of information. So I'll see you over in
Thank you,
your
Jade.
channel.
Always my pleasure as well. And thank you, everyone, for your participation. Great questions, great discussion. Sorry for getting on my soapbox so much, but hopefully it was entertaining, if nothing else.
Perfection. See you later, people.
Yeah, folks. We'll see you soon. Bye.
He's gone. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm just setting up the dump for Pete. Pete Johns. Should take a second, and then we'll be able to dump you over to the next show, wherever it is. It's not showing. Why is it not showing up? Pete Johns. There we go. So a bit of behind the scenes action here. That's not the one we want. We want, give me a sec. So let me tell you what's happening here on the channel. We've got some really fun stuff coming up. I know there's going to be some controversial stuff coming up because, and we may discuss this over on Pete's show coming up next. Let's talk a little bit about AI before we go, because I recently have discovered a bunch of music creation AI tools and have been playing with them a hell of a lot. And I know AI is a very controversial subject, but next week we're going to be taking a look, a very special 2-hour special. I think it's going to be on Monday, US UK time, at some of these new music creation services that are completely AI, making music, lyrics, the whole thing that's going to be Monday. And wow, it's scary. Listen, let me just get this out of the way before I get out of here. When it was art, it didn't seem that scary because I'm not an artist. When it was video, it didn't seem that scary because I'm not a video, I'm not an expert video editor. I just do what I do here in my little studio. But now that it's music and it's starting to get a little bit close to the bone, we're going to have to discuss this and talk about it and see exactly where we're going. What are the pros? What are the cons? Is it really going to change things? I have some pretty strong opinions on it. We're going to, during this show, make some songs about you in the chat. So you're going to want to come along and let me know that you're here. And we're going to make some funny songs about all of you guys just for a bit of a hoot. So that is happening early next week. Also, what is happening tomorrow, I need to let you know. We are doing... How do I do this? We can do this. There we go. Bass Hammer tomorrow by Nembrini, taking a look at that at the usual time. There is no walk with me for a couple of weeks until I work out exactly what is going on. But walk with me, or some form of walk with me, will be back at some stage. Yes, so don't be afraid. It's not completely going away. It's just changes because it's becoming winter here in Australia and I need to work out how we're going to do things. Yet Suno is one of them, Aaron, and the other one, there's a new one which I've been playing with, which is absolutely free, called Udio. And some of the songs that we've made with it are just crazy. Maybe we'll go with that for the last minute of the show. Opening hour this week is going to be 80s, and the rant this week is going to be about comedy. How far is too far? Why do I mention that? Because I have another new show starting soon featuring Gladys Worthington, but we'll talk about that. Patrons, make sure you get your songs into me if you want them mastered. There's some giveaways. There'll be another one tomorrow added to the Patreon, so you can become a patron if you want. All right, let's go out and play you something that I made with AI. Good God. So, I think this is the one. Let me check. Is this it? So, I'll just refresh this. So last night, me and Brad Example were hanging out, and Brad Example sent me some lyrics, and I put together a song using AI. And it took, trust me, this isn't just like slap some lyrics in and just hope for the best. It actually took me about an hour to create this thing. Right? It took me a long time to piece all this together. So it's not, if you want something actually good, you have to spend some time on it. So let's play a bit of it, and then I'll see you over at Pete's This is a song that Brad wrote lyrically, and we put it in. And let's have a listen to it while I put up the title screen and say goodbye. We'll see you over at Pete's, yeah? Remember, do the things that make you happy. Mistakes make you better. We'll all rise together. Stay awake. We'll see you over at Pete's.
So easily addicted to everything. Painless for a moment, give me ink. I live a life of sin. Every day I'm born again. Start a new day, a way to make new mistakes.
Thank you also to today's sponsor, DistroKid, and thank you all for being here. You guys rock.
A fire that never burns out. No matter how old I get, never gets put